Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
On December 13th, 2009, security cameras in Henderson, Nevada captured a young man parking his white Chevy Cavalier at the end of the cul-de-sac in the Sun City Anthem neighborhood. He stepped out with something tucked under his arm and walked purposefully down the sidewalk. But he never came back. 2 days later, the car was still there, but 30-year-old Steven Koecher was nowhere to be found. In the days and weeks that followed, Steven's family learned of a series of odd, long-distance road trips he had taken in the days before he vanished. As they began to investigate, police were left with more questions than answers. What had drawn Steven to that upscale neighborhood on a Sunday afternoon? Did he walk away to start a new life? Did he meet with foul play? Or was there an entirely different explanation? Now, over 16 years later, Steven's fate remains unsolved, and his loved ones are still desperate for answers. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell you the story of Steven Koecher. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case. Ethan doesn't know anything about the case going into the episode and is here to provide his reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones you have at home. All right, so I'm starting off with an apology. I did not plan on having two-part episodes in a row. In fact, I specifically chose Steven's case because I thought it would be not straightforward, but that there wouldn't be 100 rabbit holes to go down.
And then what happened?
Yeah, I spent an entire day digging through property records, court records, background reports, and calling Utah courthouses. So yeah, that was the point where I realized I was very wrong.
Well, welcome to another two-part episode.
Yeah, because there's just so much to this story that try as I may, I could not fit it into one episode. So this week, we're going to talk about who Steven Koecher was, what was going on in the weeks and days leading up to his disappearance, and we'll get started in on the initial investigation. Then next week, we're going to keep going with the investigation and dive into some other people in Steven's life and what they had going on at the time of his disappearance. For those of you who are listening on our regular podcast platforms, part 2 will be released next week. But for those of you who are listening to this through our Patreon, you'll have part 2 waiting as soon as you're done with this one. Speaking of Patreon, we want to take a moment to thank some of our newest Patreon members. So thank you to Carrie G, Lindsay K, Nadine W, Sharon F, and Louise C. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you all so much.
As a reminder, if you'd like to get our episodes ad-free and sometimes early, you can join us over on Patreon at any level, just starting at $2 a month. You'll also get a free copy of the ebook that I wrote. So with all that finished, let's get into part 1 of the story of Steven Koecher. Steven Koecher was born on November 1st, 1979 in Amarillo, Texas, to Deanne and Rolf Koecher. He was the second of 5 children. The family had deep roots in Utah, and during Steven's childhood, they spent time in the Bountiful, Utah area, where his father worked as a newspaper editor. The Koechers are devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and service to others was a big part of Steven's life. He achieved the rank of Eagle Scout.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's a big deal.
It is a huge deal. And he went on an LDS mission to Brazil after high school and became fluent in Portuguese.
Isn't that like the exact plot of Book of Mormon?
I mean, yes, it wasn't Brazil, but yes. Steven was bright and outgoing. He earned his associate's degree at BYU, Idaho, formerly Ricks College, and then transferred to the University of Utah, where he graduated in 2005 with a bachelor's in communications. And, you know, that math, because Steven's a little bit older than us,
right.
And I was like, that math doesn't work out. But then I remembered he was in Brazil after high school.
Right.
Not going directly
Not
to
going
college.
to college, right.
Learning a lot more than we were learning at
Probably.
the same time.
Yes.
Stephen had dreams of following in his father's journalistic footsteps. During college, he interned in the Utah governor's office doing PR, and after graduation, he worked as a freelance reporter using the byline Steve Thel for the Davis County Clipper, his dad's newspaper. Stephen even won a Utah Press Association award in 2006 for one of his feature stories.
That's impressive.
Yeah. By 2007, he landed a job with the Salt Lake Tribune's advertising division. He enjoyed the work, but he disliked the fact that he had to work overnight hours, and he especially hated Salt Lake City's notorious winter inversion smog.
What the hell is that?
Right? Okay, I had never heard of this either, so obviously I Googled it because I read this in a couple places, and they're like, oh yeah, he hated that winter inversion smog. I'm like, what on earth?
Yeah, what does that
I've never
mean?
heard that term before. So it's a big problem in Salt Lake City in the winter, and I'm sure the surrounding area. But basically, when it's cold, polluted air is trapped in the valley by a warm air cap, and it creates some of the worst air quality in the U.S.
Huh.
Like, isn't that wild?
That is weird. Another reason not to go to Utah.
But it looks so beautiful.
It's probably not beautiful for the people in the city that are.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe
in.
don't go there in the winter, I guess. So after suffering through the frigid, polluted winter of 2008, Stephen decided that he'd had enough of the cold and decided to move to sunny St. George, Utah in April 2009. Now, so Salt Lake is basically northern Utah, St. George is southern.
Got it.
In fact, it's the far southwest corner of Utah, and it's a desert city that's just a 2-hour drive from Las Vegas.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea of the topography. And this actually isn't the first case that we've covered in St. George. Mason Smith, the teenager who walked out of his house never to be seen again, was also from St. George. But Mason's case took place much later. He went missing in 2015. Now, at first, Stephen was able to work remotely at his advertising job in Salt Lake. He rented a room in a house, and a young man named Jordan rented another room in the home. Jordan had a very different lifestyle from Stephen. Like many 20-somethings, Jordan liked to drink and smoke, while Stephen, as a devout Mormon, abstained from alcohol and even caffeine.
Right.
But despite their differences, Jordan later said that he and Stephen got along just fine. Stephen was a friendly guy, and he even was able to get Jordan to play on a church softball team with him.
Ooh, risque for a Mormon.
I know. By all accounts, Stephen was well-liked in his new community. He jumped into church activities, joined a local LDS singles congregation, or ward, volunteered as a youth mentor, and continued researching his family history, which was a hobby he loved. However, 2009 was a challenging year for Stephen. The Great Recession was hitting hard, and he struggled to find stable employment. For those of you who are American and remember the recession in 2009, that's when the real estate market crashed, 2008, 2009, and the construction industry was hit really hard. And apparently the construction industry was huge in St. George, so that whole area was just really hit hard. By the fall, Stephen was no longer working for the Tribune, and the only job he could find was a low-paying gig distributing flyers for a window washing and blind cleaning company in St. George. The pay was low, obviously, and Stephen quickly got behind on his rent and other bills. Because also, I'm sure he wasn't making much at his newspaper job either, because media jobs paid nothing, especially, kind of entry-level jobs like that. So he probably wasn't flush with cash when he had a full-time job.
Right.
And then, he lost that.
Right.
But, Stephen was close with his family, so of course they tried to help him out financially. At one point, his mother put some money into his account, and his grandmother even mailed him a check to help out. But Stephen didn't want their money. He was proud and very much wanted to solve his issues on his own. In fact, he never cashed his grandma's check, and he kept assuring his parents that things were looking up. And it did seem like Stephen had reasons to be optimistic as the holidays approached. He had told his mom that he was excited to come home to Bountiful for Christmas. He remained active in his LDS ward, and his bishop had mentioned some promising job leads for him after the new year.
Oh, so it did sound like things were looking up.
Exactly. So he was definitely going through a rough patch, but he was optimistic that he'd be coming out on the other side of it,
Mm-hmm.
But in the second week of December 2009, Steven started to do some things that were pretty out of character for him. Now, I will say before I get into this, over the years, there have been some discrepancies in this timeline, depending on, what news source you're reading and everything like that. So the one that I decided to work from was put together in February 2010, so just 2 months after Steven went missing. And I believe it was initially created by one of Steven's cousins, and then other people, I think, kind of added to it and edited it.
So potentially the most accurate.
That's why I decided to go with it, because it was made so soon after the disappearance,
right.
Not, a news article several years later. But some of the dates that show up on this will show up differently if you look at, say, the Wikipedia on this.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I wanted to go with these dates. And again, the only date discrepancies are in the days leading up to his disappearance. All of the sources agree that December 13th is when he actually went missing. So in the first week of December 2009, everything seemed normal in Steven's life. He attended church activities, worked his part-time job, went grocery shopping, and just lived his life. But remember, he was having money problems. Between December 1st and the 5th, his landlord, Brett Bishop, was trying to reach him about rent. Being the first of the month, it was obviously due, but Steven had not paid. In fact, according to Bishop, Steven was behind about 3 months. When he couldn't get in touch with Steven, Brett called Steven's parents, who had been listed on the lease. And so I think at that point, Brett was concerned that Steven was just going to kind of move out and not say anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so that's kind of why he was like, let me get in touch with the parents. Maybe they know what's going on. Yeah.
Right.
So he left a message telling them about the rent situation. Steven's dad called Steven after receiving the message, and he caught his son while he was at the grocery store. Steven denied being 3 full months behind on rent and was kind of annoyed on the call.
Mm.
Again, Steven seems like the type of person who really wanted to handle things on his own. He had just turned 30, and he probably didn't want his parents getting in his business like that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be independent to be an Eagle Scout, so I'm sure that, that's just his personality.
Exactly. Tina Bishop, Brett Bishop's wife, made several posts about Steven on web sleuths starting shortly after his disappearance. In one, she said that Steven and Brett eventually connected that week and made plans for Steven to get caught up on rent. But she never specifically said what those plans were.
Yeah. I mean, would it be a payment plan? I guess it depends on
I think that's
the
kind of
landlord.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what she was saying, because it seems like he was able to give a little bit of money and then, had plans to give a little bit more later, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So between December 5th and the 8th, everything seemed to remain normal. Steven stuck to his church routine, and he saw his boss in St. George on Tuesday, December 8th. But the next day, on December 9th, Steven started making some odd trips. I'm so excited to tell you about our sponsor, Avocado Green Mattress, because they have certified organic mattresses with thoughtfully chosen materials that are designed to support healthier living and more restorative sleep, which I know we all need. Because better sleep changes everything. It changes your morning, your moods, and your energy. And their products are built to last with durable, high-quality materials. Avocado products are an investment in long-term vitality. They're not a short-term fix. Plus, you can be sure that you'll have no regrets because you'll get a sleep trial of up to 1 year to ensure that you're getting the best mattress for you. When it comes to what you sleep on, real wins. Real is better. Go to avocadogreenmattress.com/ATTWG to check out their mattress and bedding sale. That's avocadogreenmattress.com/ATTWG. avocadogreenmattress.com/ATTWG. Most of us are trying to get healthier, but we're guessing about which habits actually matter for our bodies, and we're all different. So what if you can measure how your body is aging and know exactly what to focus on next? Listen, I need instructions, and that's what True Diagnostic does. They test your biological age and key health markers, and then they give you a clear 90-day plan based on what your body needs without the guesswork. The test is so easy to take at home. They send you the kit, you take a little finger prick, send it in, and then you get this amazingly detailed report back that tells you everything you need to know. I'm so excited to get my next round of results to see if I've improved or what's changed in general since the last time I took it. I'm really interested in the True Health test, which tests over 105 biomarkers, including vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fatty acids to understand my system's health right now. True Diagnostic is trusted by top longevity clinics and health professionals, not just consumers at home. And right now, my listeners can get 20% off at truediagnostic.com using code ATTWG20 at checkout. That's truediagnostic.com and use code ATTWG20 for 20% off today. Choose True Age, True Health, or the combo kit as a one-time purchase or subscription. Did you know there's an online cannabis company that ships federally legal THC right to your door? I'm talking about Mood.com. They have an incredible line of cannabis gummies, and you can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with promo code ATTWG. These are functional gummies that are optimized to kick in as little as 15 minutes and take you to the mood you're looking for. I am not surprised to learn that their Sleepy Time Advanced Gummies are their current bestseller because let me tell you, those things work. And I've tried everything, and these get me to sleep, keep me asleep without feeling groggy the next morning. They also have CBD gummies for gentle relaxation and pain relief, or even Mind Magic gummies for deep work and enhanced creativity. And everything just ships discreetly right to your door. Best of all, not only is every Mood product backed by a 100-day satisfaction guarantee, but as I mentioned, listeners get 20% off their first order with code ATTWG. So head to Mood.com, find the functional gummy that matches exactly what you're looking for, and let them help you discover your perfect mood. And don't forget to use promo code ATTWG when you check out to save 20% on your first order. Try it today at Mood.com. In the early morning hours of December 9th, 2009, Steven left St. George sometime after 2 a.m. Some reports say that he stopped in Salt Lake City for gas, but that isn't on the official timeline I'm working from. But it was posted in enough other places that I'm thinking maybe that was determined later. No.
Okay.
But it looks like he stopped in Salt Lake City for gas. And he had a lot of friends and family in Salt Lake, obviously, and especially just in the area.
But it doesn't sound like he reached out to any of them.
Not a single person. Instead, he headed west on I-80 for another 120 plus miles into Nevada to the border town of West Wendover, where he stopped for fuel around 8:45 a.m. And again, some of these times are also a little funky because we're dealing with several different time zones.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I think all the times given are like local time, so like that's what time it was in Wendover.
Gotcha.
From Wendover, Steven went even further west into remote northeast Nevada. He drove about 2 more hours to a place called Ruby Valley, arriving around 1 p.m. local time. As it turns out, one of Steven's college ex-girlfriends, Anne-Marie Neff, had grown up in Ruby Valley. Steven had visited the Neff family's ranch once or twice in the past, and on this day, he showed up at the Neff's home unannounced. And keep in mind, this is a college girlfriend. He's 30.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was like 25 or whatever when he graduated college. But still, I mean, it's been years since he dated this girl. So anyway, Anne-Marie wasn't there, but her parents were home and obviously a little bit surprised to see Steven on their doorstep. Now, this was also interesting because it's not like Steven and Anne-Marie had this like super serious long-term relationship. Like it was never even like that. I mean, they did date, but it really didn't last that long. It wasn't that serious. Like it was just a weird place for him to stop.
Yeah.
The Neffs later recalled that Steven seemed friendly and told them that he had been in the area and thought that he'd stop by to see Anne-Marie.
See, when you initially said that he was going on these trips,
yeah,
like these random road trips, my first thought was drug mule.
Oh.
Like a quick way to get cash. He's down on his luck, needs money. Drug mule, go pick up some drugs, take it to another city, drop it off. But this is, maybe that did happen, and it did just happen to be the drop location was around her house.
Yeah, I do want to state for the record, I do not believe he was muling drugs to the Neff family.
Well, no, yeah. No, it's just maybe it was just an odd coincidence that that's where the drop location was.
Well, so it is interesting, right? Because, and we will talk about the locations and possible significance of that here in a minute. All right, so the Neffs invited Steven to stay for lunch. Like, this is also like 1950s to me, right? Like, I cannot imagine some random person, showing up at my doorstep unannounced.
Yeah.
Like, dear God.
Yeah.
And then also being like, oh, yeah, hey, why don't you stay for lunch? Like, I don't know. Maybe I am unfriendly, but still.
You said it, not me.
So he stayed and chatted with them for about 2 hours. During the visit, Steven mentioned that he was on his way to visit family in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is odd for a few reasons. One, if you were going from St. George to Sacramento, the most direct route would take you through southern Nevada into Bakersfield, California, and then north up to Sacramento. That drive would be over 10 hours. But Ruby Valley is in northern Nevada, so to go through Ruby Valley on your way to Sacramento would add about 3 hours to the trip.
Unless you're diverting to pick up drugs along the way.
Well, yeah. So if he perhaps needed to go to Salt Lake City first, where he stopped for gas, and was already up in northern Utah for some reason, stopping through Ruby Valley, then on his way to Sacramento would make more sense geographically. It would still add a little bit of time to that drive, but it would be a nice way to break up a long drive too.
Yeah.
Now, Orem, Utah is near Salt Lake City and also would have fit well on this route. But we're going to talk more about Orem in part 2. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay.
Now, the second reason why it was odd that Steven was driving to Sacramento to visit family is because Steven doesn't have any family in Sacramento.
There we go. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so if he was actually planning on going there, it wasn't for the reason he told the Neffs. And of course, we don't know exactly why Steven lied about this, but I obviously have my theories. In any case, after lunch, Steven said goodbye to the Neffs and decided to turn back to St. George instead of going to Sacramento because there was a storm coming in. Now, the Neffs said that they actually did have a whole conversation about this. Like, after he said he was going to Sacramento, which was still hours away from where they were in Ruby Valley, they're like, listen, there's a bad storm coming in. Like, you probably shouldn't make that drive today. And so basically, by the end of the visit, Steven was like, you know what? You're right. It's a bad idea. Do it another time. Just going to go home to St. George. What we don't know is if he had ever been planning to go to Sacramento.
Right.
Or if he had just made that up as a reason why he was in their area. But either way, we do know that he did, in fact, go back home to St. George that day. On the drive home, Steven spoke to his sister on the phone around 3:45 p.m. and to his mother later that evening. During both of these calls, he didn't mention anything about the road trip. He didn't mention the Neff Ranch or any plans to go to Sacramento.
This is all fitting very nicely into my theory.
Yeah. According to his mom, Steven sounded upbeat and positive on the phone, despite the topic of their call being his finances, which was obviously a touchy subject. And this is when she put a little money in his bank account to help, but he never ended up using it.
Yeah, and he's upbeat because he's about to get paid for his drug running habit. I don't want to call it a habit.
Yeah.
It's one time.
Yeah. Now, again, some timelines put this trip on the 10th, but either way, we know that he made it back home to St. George, and we're still a few days away from when he actually goes missing. But on that day, he drove over 900 miles.
That's insane.
And remember, Steven was watching every dollar at this point. So why would he spend a small fortune on gas to joyride all over the region? See, it's so funny that you went directly to Drug Mule, because when I first heard about this case, to me, it just seemed as though he was going through a hard time, like he was maybe depressed and wanted to just take random road trips as a way to deal with it.
Yeah, but it's like you said. I mean, if you're watching your money, why would you burn through so much gas money?
Well, I think when you're depressed, maybe you're not making the most
sure,
fiscally responsible decisions all the time.
Sure.
So I don't know. That was my thought when I first heard about this. According to that early timeline I mentioned, on December 10th, Steven and his sister talked again. But once again, Steven doesn't mention any traveling. Then, according to bank statements, he spent $32.88 at the Flying J Travel Plaza in Springville, Utah. Then, that evening, he spent $3.64 at Taco Time in Nephi, Utah, before returning home to St. George. Now, that was basically going all the way up to northern Utah and back, which was about 530 miles round trip.
This is a separate trip?
Yeah. This is on the 10th. So we, of course, don't know why Steven drove hundreds of miles through Utah that day. But what I will mention right now is that the Flying J that he stopped at in Springville, Utah, is less than 15 minutes away from a home at 311 West 170 North in Orem, Utah. But again, we're not ready to talk about Orem yet.
Okay.
The next day, Friday, December 11th, Steven stayed local in St. George. As far as we know, he spent the day doing, his usual routine. He handed out advertising flyers for his job. He attended to church matters, things like that. In fact, there was a little heartwarming story that emerged from that day. While he was out and about, Steven came across two young girls who had accidentally locked themselves out of their house. It was, pretty cold outside, and these were just little kids. So Steven, being the good Samaritan, stopped to help. He helped the girls look for a spare key, and when they couldn't find one, he called their mother for them. He then made sure the kids got safely to a neighbor's home to stay warm until the mom could come home and help. And, this wasn't a big newsworthy event or anything. It was just a nice illustration of the type of person Steven was. On Saturday, December 12th, Steven hit the road again for a shorter road trip, this time heading south. That morning around 9 a.m., his cell phone pinged off a tower near Overton, Nevada, which is roughly halfway between St. George and Las Vegas. Sometime that afternoon, he began heading back toward Utah. At 4:04 p.m., he stopped in and bought gas and snacks at a convenience store in Mesquite, Nevada, which is on his way home to St. George. We know Steven made it back to St. George on the night of December 12th because he made a quick shopping trip. He went to a local Kmart and purchased a baby bib and some Christmas ornaments, which are believed to be gifts for his brother Matthew's family. And so apparently it sounds like their family drew names for Christmas, and so he got Matthew. So he was getting gifts specifically for him and his kids.
Gotcha.
And these gifts line up with the conversation he had had with his mother, in which he told her he was planning on coming home for Christmas on December 23rd. The purchase shows that Steven was making concrete plans to go home for Christmas. It wasn't just like a story he had told his mom to placate her. One of Steven's neighbors later reported that they saw his car at his home at 10 p.m. However, the same neighbor said that his car was gone by 10:30. I don't know if he left and came back or if he left for good at 10 p.m. because the neighbor didn't report seeing his car again after that. But, it was late at night. He could have just missed it.
Right.
But by the next morning, Steven and his car were definitely gone from his home, never to return.
If weight management is one of your New Year goals, Quicksilver Scientific's GLP-1 amplifier can help. This science-backed formula supports metabolic balance, curbs cravings, and promotes healthy blood sugar levels, making it easier to stay consistent and in control. It helps give your body the boost it needs to keep you on track. Feel confident and energized this year with Quicksilver Scientific's GLP-1 amplifier. Get 10% off and free shipping at tryqs.com/podcast. Again, that's tryqs.com/podcast for 10% off and free shipping. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
At 7:52 a.m. on December 13th, 2009, one of Steven's church leaders, a man named Greg Webb, called him. Webb was driving back from Las Vegas to St. George and worried that he might miss an 11 a.m. ward meeting. He asked if Steven could cover for him, but Steven responded that he was actually in Las Vegas himself at the moment. He offered to drive back if absolutely needed, but Brother Webb told him not to worry about it, as he would likely make it. Unfortunately, Webb later said that he didn't think to ask why Steven was in Las Vegas. It was an unusual trip for him, but in the rush of the moment, he just accepted Steven's answer. But of course, in hindsight, he wishes he'd asked for details.
Sure. But, I mean, how was he supposed to know that Steven would go missing?
Exactly. He was just stressed out trying to make it back home for a meeting, you know? He wasn't worried about what Steven was doing, just that he couldn't cover for him. Around 9:47 a.m., another church friend, Seth, called Steven to ask if he could make an announcement at church at the 1 p.m. service. Steven again said sorry he couldn't, he was in Las Vegas and wasn't going to be there. The friend didn't press him on why he was in Vegas. And a third call came in at 11:15 Utah time from someone else at church asking him about filling in that morning. And Steven told him the same thing. These were the last known conversations that anyone had with Steven. None of the callers sensed anything off or any distress in his voice. They just thought it was a little odd that he was out of town and missing church services.
And his phone actually pinged in Las Vegas?
Yeah, everything on his phone matched up with those calls.
Okay. So he is actually in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And this is after he parked his car in that upscale neighborhood and walked away?
No.
This
is all before.
Okay. All right.
So this is the morning of December 13th.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. After those 3 calls, at 11:54 a.m. Las Vegas time, a home security camera recorded Steven's car, a white Chevy Cavalier, driving into the Sun City Anthem development in Henderson, Nevada. And Henderson is basically attached to Vegas.
Okay.
It's like the next town over. Now, this specific neighborhood was a nice 55 and up community on the southeastern edge of the Las Vegas Valley. The car is seen pulling into a cul-de-sac and parking. About 6 minutes later, another camera captured a grainy video of a man believed to be Steven walking down the sidewalk away from the parked car. He was dressed nicely and appeared to be carrying a folder or a portfolio or an envelope or something like that under his arm. The footage shows him walking at a normal pace, quote, with purpose, as his brother later said, not looking disoriented or confused. For a moment, his reflection was caught in the window of a nearby vehicle as he headed north on foot up an adjacent street, which was Evening Light Street. Then he walked out of the camera's view. And that was the last time Steven Koecher has ever been seen. And I'll show you the video.
Okay.
Just so you can get an idea of what we're talking about here. Okay, so I just showed you the video. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with his brother. He definitely doesn't look disoriented. He looks like he knows exactly where he's going.
Mm-hmm. Now, what I will say is that, this is a home security camera in 2009. So this is when you had to make an expensive home security system and the quality still sucked.
Yeah.
So it's really not possible to say with 100% certainty that that is Steven. They were able to, prove that that was his car.
Right.
But, technically you can't tell who that is. However, people have said, based on the clothing, the way he walked, the height he appears to be.
It was most likely.
It was most likely Steven. His family believes that it's him. But of course, once again, there's no 100% certainty.
Now, I noticed a white SUV come in behind his car.
Yeah.
And then as he's seen walking through down the street, the white SUV pulls up and stops kind of perpendicular to the street that Steven turned up.
Yeah. And so a lot of people had questions about that. And I had questions too, because it almost looked like they were following him.
Right.
So the owner of that SUV was found. It was a realtor who was there who had, I believe it was the listing agent. So I think that person had a listing in the neighborhood. But in any case, it was a realtor who has been interviewed by police and was in that area at that time for a legitimate, specific reason.
But doesn't necessarily remember seeing Steven?
No.
Okay.
So Steven's car remained parked in that cul-de-sac untouched. Steven himself did not return to it. He didn't show up for work or church back in Utah, and no one in his family or his circle heard from him after that afternoon. It was as if he stepped off the face of the earth after walking into that neighborhood near Las Vegas. But unfortunately, it took a little while for anyone to really realize that Steven was missing. Because remember, he was a single adult living on his own. He didn't have a spouse or kids waiting for him at home. And he was normally in touch with his parents about once a week, and he had just spoken with them the day before, you know? And they lived hundreds of miles away and didn't immediately know that he had disappeared.
What about his roommate?
Well, so by that point, his roommate Jordan had split. He was also behind on rent and had taken off in the middle of the night in late November.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for the landlord.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk more about that later because, that was kind of a mess. So the first people to notice something unusual were the staff of the Sun City Anthem Homeowners Association.
Right, because the car's in there.
Yeah, just parked in a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Not at all where a car should be, especially not for days. So 2 days later, on December 15th, the white Cavalier with Utah plates was still sitting at the end of Savannah Springs Avenue and obviously caught the HOA's attention. They ran the plate and found that it was registered to Steven in St. George. Now, that prompted a call. They were actually able to see one of the window washing flyers in the car. So they called that number, ended up talking to Steven's boss and, saying, hey, do you know somebody with a white Cavalier, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, that's Steven's. Here's his cell number. So then the HOA called Steven's cell. Now, sometime, obviously they didn't get in touch with Steven. So at some point, they were able to get the number of Steven's parents. And I think that might have had to do with the car insurance was still in their name or something along those lines. But they were able to connect with Steven's parents. So the HOA called them, left a message.
Now, when the HOA called Steven's phone, did they say it rang or did it go straight to voicemail?
So as we're going to talk about his phone later, and I would say that based on what we know, it most likely rang.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll get to that. But obviously, no one answered.
Yeah.
So they called Steven's parents, left a message, and Deanna got the voicemail. So when she got the voicemail, which was either the 16th or the 17th, she immediately started calling around to relatives asking if they had heard from Steven, but nobody had. That's, of course, when panic set in, and the Koechers officially reported Steven missing on December 17th, 2009, 4 days after he was last seen. Steven's father and brother Dallin drove straight down to Henderson to retrieve Steven's car and search for him. Inside the car, they found the evidence of his busy weekend, maps and job applications, and the Kmart bag with the gifts that he bought for his brother's baby. He even had frozen food in there and a blanket. Seeing those items left in the car made Dallin believe that his brother didn't vanish by choice, saying, quote, someone who is thinking about disappearing isn't buying Christmas gifts, end quote. The Koechers went door to door in the Henderson neighborhood where Steven's car had been parked. They showed residents his picture, but no one said that they'd seen him. After that, they drove to St. George to check Steven's house. When they got there, nothing seemed out of place at all. His room wasn't packed up, and there was no indication that he'd planned a long trip. He'd left behind most of his clothes and personal belongings. His laptop was there, for instance, and the only things missing were whatever he had taken with him to Henderson. So presumably his wallet, his keys, his cell phone, and whatever that folder or paperwork or envelope was. It truly looked like Steven had intended to return home shortly. However, one missing item did concern them: Steven's passport. While that gave them pause, he hadn't even taken his phone charger. So while they couldn't find his passport, they also didn't know that he had it with him. It could have just been stored somewhere else.
Just a curious question. Do we know, you mentioned that there were job applications.
Yeah.
Do we know where?
We don't specifically, but from what I understand, none were anywhere near Henderson.
Well, I'm wondering if the job applications, if they were in coordination with some of these random trips, right?
It doesn't sound like it. Okay. So, yeah, no other mention of these job applications have been made. So, I don't think there's anything that links them to any of these road trips.
Because that could be an easy way to, to say oh, maybe he wasn't running drugs. Maybe he was looking for a job in these random cities or whatever. But if they're not tied to that, then
it doesn't seem like they are.
So my theory's still in play.
It could be. Basically, the point is that regardless of what he was doing, nothing indicated that he was planning on being away from home for long. So at first, the Koechers hoped against hope that there was a simple explanation for Steven's absence. Maybe not a great explanation, but something that they could figure out, maybe he had a medical episode or an accident and would turn up somewhere. But as the days turned into weeks, they were thrust into the nightmare scenario. Their loved one was missing, and there were no answers. Police in both Nevada and Utah got involved. Henderson Metropolitan Police treated the case as a missing person and canvassed the Anthem neighborhood where Steven was last seen. They also organized searches of the surrounding desert terrain with helicopters, ATVs, and search dogs. Unfortunately, nothing concrete was found. On December 23rd, just before Christmas, Henderson police even released a short video on their YouTube channel with Steven's photo and case information, appealing to the public for tips. By Christmas 2009, the media in both Las Vegas and Salt Lake City had picked up on Steven's story. Local TV news ran segments about the young man from Utah missing in Henderson. The Salt Lake Tribune noted that Steven was actually a former employee of theirs from his advertising job, which brought more attention. In early January, search teams continued to comb desert areas around Henderson. On one of those searches, volunteers found some bone fragments, which briefly raised, a hope of some sort, but they turned out not to be human. Meanwhile, the Koecher family did everything they could do to keep the story alive and find leads. They traveled to Las Vegas multiple times to check hospitals, homeless shelters, and even jails in case Steven was out there with no ID or had gotten into trouble. At one point, staff at an IHOP in Las Vegas told the family that they thought a customer matching Steven's description had been coming in regularly, and this person appeared not to have a home. So, even though the staff said the man was drinking iced tea every time he came in and his family was like, Steven never drank iced tea, they were obviously still hopeful. They staked out that IHOP for 4 nights, but the guy never showed back up. Eventually, they got a more detailed description of him and realized that it wasn't Steven. So, this guy was shorter, and he also had a peculiar habit of wrapping his seat in saran wrap and wearing gloves while eating, which is not something that Steven was ever known to have done. So, it turned out to be a dead end. Now, of course, they also scrutinized Steven's financial accounts for clues. And that's really how we have that timeline. There was no activity on his bank account or credit cards after he disappeared. The one, odd charge that did come through kind of freaked everybody out because, again, it came through after his disappearance, but it was an automatic renewal from GoDaddy. So It was just for a website domain he had bought for, a side business years ago. And so it was an automatic renewal. It had nothing to do with anything. In short, after going through his bank statements, after going through his laptop because his brother was able to guess his password, nothing pointed to Steven having a secret life or a plan to vanish. And that held true. So in an episode of Disappeared about Steven's case that premiered in 2011, one of his cousins said that everything they discovered just confirmed who they thought Steven was. They never found anything that indicated he wasn't the friendly, devoutly religious man that they thought him to be. As Steven's father, Rolf, told Deseret News in February 2010, quote, "We've considered every possibility, but each possibility has a contradiction. Is it plausible that someone is walking down the street and then suddenly they vanished? All clues are consistent with that, but that's not possible, end quote. And it's not. I mean, we know people don't actually vanish off the face of the earth.
Right.
But one moment, Steven Koecher was on camera walking on a quiet cul-de-sac, and the next moment he was gone. He had no enemies, had not seemed depressed or distressed, and everyone who saw or spoke to him in the days leading up to his disappearance said that he was his normal, upbeat self. So what happened?
Do you want my theories?
I want your, because we're getting ready to wrap up episode 1, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I mean, so the front runner, obviously, with these random trips, like I said before, is drug runner, quick way to make cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another possibility is he's making all of these trips to these different destinations to create a new identity.
Oh.
To get forged paperwork, forged passport, birth certificate, driver's licenses.
Yeah.
With what money, I don't know. Maybe
right.
Maybe that was part of it, though. Maybe it's hand in hand with the drug running, and then creating another identity to skip town. Why? I don't know.
Right.
Because if he's not exhibiting, I mean, aside from him being, kind of down on his luck at the moment, he had resources available, family that he could go to. Obviously, setting his pride aside.
Yeah. But he didn't seem to be at that like rock bottom point yet,
Right, exactly.
And so, yes, he still had a safety net that he could use. And he just didn't, from what I'm, gathering from this, I don't think he felt like he was there yet. Like he didn't feel like he needed to say, oh my gosh, mom and dad, I'm in deep. I really need money. I need your help. Bail me out.
Or can I move back in with you?
Can I move back in with you? You're right. None of that. It's like he wasn't there, because again, it just sounded like he needed to get through the holidays.
I mean, another outside possibility. So the thing I'll say about him voluntarily skipping town, creating a new life for himself, while we have seen previous cases where people who have done that have left all of their belongings behind, and it does seem very confusing. The frozen meal in the car, that's what gets me.
Yeah,
everything else I can see. Like, I have these gifts. Someone will find my car. They'll end up where they need to be. Right. But the frozen meal. That's what's throwing me off.
Yeah, and like other just regular groceries,
Yeah, why would you do that? So then that leads me to a possibility of another worst case scenario. Foul play.
Right.
He was meeting up with somebody in that neighborhood, perhaps a drug run, and things went bad.
Yeah.
All theory, not really. It's just conjecture at this point.
Yeah. I mean, and I could, if we're talking foul play, like I could see that, like a meeting gone wrong, more so than like a random event.
No, I don't.
In a 55 and up neighborhood in Henderson, Nevada. You know what I mean?
If these random road trips hadn't been known, I would veer kind of towards like happenstance.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's exhibiting these odd behaviors or out of character behaviors.
Yeah.
Not telling anybody that he's on these road trips. But then we have evidence that he's on these long road trips and even meeting up with ex-girlfriend's parents just to say hi or whatever. That to me shows, obviously his behavior pattern changed, but that he was doing something. There was something. It doesn't even necessarily have to be nefarious. It doesn't have to be drug running, but he was doing something that was very out of character.
And that he didn't want his family and friends to know about.
Right.
And that's the part that sticks with me, because you could make the argument, like maybe he was just a private person and just didn't want to tell his family what he was up to, just because he didn't think it was their business, not because anything crazy was going on. But I go back to what the cousin said about how they went through his laptop.
Right.
And, in 2009, there's a lot more shit on your laptop than your phone.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's the opposite now.
Yeah.
But I think in 2009, if they were going to find something, they would have found it on his laptop. And they didn't seem to find any indication that he was keeping anything from them, you know? Like, it didn't seem as though, and I don't want to even say that he was like living a double life, but I think that some people who don't necessarily live a double life will still keep parts of their life to themselves and not necessarily tell anybody about it just for privacy reasons. And it doesn't seem like Steven was that type of person. So to me, that makes the fact that he didn't mention what he had been doing in those days leading up to his disappearance, it makes me feel like there is a reason.
Right. There's a meaning for it.
A very concrete reason why he was keeping that to himself. Yeah. And it wasn't just privacy. At this point, you know, everybody has to keep every option open, right? Did Steven walk out of that neighborhood into the desert and take his own life? Like, to me, that's still on the table. Were the strange road trips a sign of some sort of like mental health crisis? You know? Did he perhaps suffer from some sort of break, become disoriented, and wander into the mountains never to be seen again? Like, I think that was also a possibility, as was the possibility of him being the victim of foul play. Like, I think all of that's still on the table at this point, you know?
Very much so.
Now, initially, police seemed to be leaning toward one of those like first two options, publicly stating that they had, quote, no sign of foul play, end quote, in Steven's case. However, they also admitted that they had no evidence that he voluntarily left either. It was truly an open question. And as Steven's mom aptly put it, quote, we don't know whether to hope or grieve, so we do both, end quote. And as Steven's family closed out the year searching for him, we'll close out this episode. In part 2, we're going to talk about the investigation. We'll get into a lot of theories, very deeply into theories. And we're finally going to talk about a house in Orem, Utah, and why I think it might be connected to this case. So be sure to join us next week for all of that. Or if you're listening on Patreon, you can hear it right now. Steven Koecher has been missing from Henderson, Nevada since December 13th, 2009. He is a white male who at the time was around 5'11" and around 180 pounds, with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was last seen wearing a hooded sweatshirt, a white dress shirt, blue jeans or Dockers pants, and white sneakers. Steven was 30 when he went missing. He would be 46 today. If you have any information on Steven's disappearance, please contact the Henderson Police Department at 702-267-4750. You can also submit an anonymous tip through Crime Stoppers at 702-385-5555. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheywegone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, And Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram and TikTok. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you get